back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
And what is going on, full-time family? It is time to break down UFC on ESPN 1. The very first card on big ESPN. Holy flying flipping flapjacks, we are here. It is going to be an amazing night of fights, and we're going to break down the main card here and give you my predictions for the fights this weekend. But before we get into this main card, of course it's going to be headlined by Francis Ngannou and Cain Velasquez. But also check out some of the fights that will be coming on earlier in the day, which we're not going to break down, but just check out some of these amazing fights. We've got Jimmy Rivera versus Aljamain Sterling, two of the top 10 ranked bantamweights in the world, two of the best bantamweights in the world, all politics and bullshit aside. Aljamain Sterling, I feel like he's had a couple split decision losses in his career, but barring those, man, this guy really could be undefeated in his career. One loss was a KO loss to Marlon Moraes, but even Marlon Moraes admitted after the fight in the octagon, the knee he threw wasn't even intending to knock Aljamain Sterling out. He was intending to throw a kick at his body, and the way Aljamain Sterling ducked, his face ran into the knee, and hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So Aljamain Sterling he's never been dominated. Nobody's ever just beat Aljamain Sterling's ass in a fight. It's never happened. So great fighter. He's going to be taking on Jimmy Rivera, who has been in UFC bantamweight title talks for a while now. He had a swift loss to Marlon Moraes himself, but other than that, bounced back with a big win over John Dodson. Both of these guys could be fighting for the belt in the future. So this is going to be an amazing fight. And also, we've interviewed Aljamain Sterling, so a friend of the channel. Benito Lopez versus Manuel Bermudez. That's going to be a fun fight. I remember seeing Benito Lopez fighting on Dana White's Contender Series. Andrea KGB Lee going to be taking on Ashley the Rebel Girl Evans Smith. That's going to be a fun WMMA fight. Nick Litz is taking on Scott Holtzman. So yeah, man, we got some great fights coming up, and then all the way down here on the Fight Pass prelims for some reason, Renan Barão versus Luke Saunders. That's going to be a great fight. Not sure why it's that far down on the card, but hey, there's a lot of great fights, so got to fight somewhere on the card. Now, with that being said, let's jump straight into the first fight of the main card for UFC on ESPN, Velasquez versus Ngannou, and it's going to be between Andre Fili and Myles Jury. Andre Fili has been one of the best unranked featherweights in the UFC for a while. He just hasn't been able to beat the best fighters that he's fought on his impressive resume. He trains at Team Alpha Male, and he's 2-2 in his last 4 fights, coming off of a split decision loss to Michael Johnson. Myles Jury is also 2-2 in his last 4 fights, only losing to Chad Mendes and Charles Oliveira, who are 2 of the best featherweights in the world. So this is going to be a great fight. I am going to give a slight edge to Myles Jury to win this fight. It's a tough call though. For me, this is like 60-40 because Myles Jury actually has a win over Michael Johnson earlier in his career, and he's been fighting slightly higher level competition in his UFC career. Andre Fili is the slightly younger, more experienced fighter and has a great fight team, so you can expect improvement and a great game plan coming into this fight. But I'm still going to give a slight edge to Myles Jury, but it is a tough call. So we'll move on to the next fight of the night, which is really interesting. Holy shit, I can't wait for this fight for multiple reasons, because Vicente Luque should probably be fighting a top 15 ranked guy right now. He's a fucking beast. He's currently riding a 3-fight winning streak, and he's an impressive 7-2 in the UFC, fighting against and beating some really good fighters such as Bilal Muhammad, Nico Price, and Chad LaPrice, and he's finished all 7 of his UFC wins. Brian Barberena is also a very talented fighter, but I would expect the underdog in this fight because he has lost his toughest fights in the UFC to date, most recently to Leon Edwards, although he bounced back with a round 1 knockout over Jake Ellenberger. So this is a tough fight for me to call, but that's surprising because I thought Vicente Luque, I would just be picking him to win. But I mean, if you really look into it a little, I mean, Vicente Luque, he's 7-2 in the UFC. He's finished all of those guys, but guess what? The 2 losses have both been by decision. We have seen some chinks in his armor, specifically his gas tank. So if he's not able to knock out Bryan Barberena, who's a really tough dude, then Bryan Barberena can outlast him. He will have better cardio, I believe, in this fight. He's never been knocked out in his career. So, I mean, Bryan Barberena's got a better chance in this fight than I originally thought. So I really want to pick Bryan Barberena for the upset, and I think I'm going to. You know what? This is Full-Time MMA's predictions. I'm picking Bryan Barberena, picking the underdog to win this fight. I'm picking him to win a decision against Vicente Luque if he can avoid being knocked out in the first round and a half. That is going to be hard to do, though. Vicente Luque's knocked out some really good fighters. He's going to be probably more athletic, a little more explosive, maybe better hands. So, Bryan Barberena, I think it would be really smart to put together a game plan of just trying to make it past the first round and a half. Don't come in here trying to brawl with Vicente Luque. Nothing wild, you know. Don't, because it might not go your way. But I do think if Bryan Barberena can make it past the halfway mark of the second round, his chances of winning this fight go up dramatically. So I'm going to pick him to pull off the upset via decision. We'll see if that pays off. Moving on. And oh, I got to make sure I get my check mark going. We got the check mark. Oh, nope. We're going to Bryan Barberena. Now, we'll use the check mark from here on out. Moving on to the next fight. Another really interesting fight. Oh, because this is the UFC, and we have a rare occurrence here. It's very rare that you see a fighter with a record of 4-0 fighting in the UFC. And that's what we have here with Kron Gracie. Now, with that being said, Kron Gracie is 4-0, but I mean, we all know, casual or hardcore, you know about the Gracie submission skills. They started it all. If you haven't watched the UFC, you know the very first UFC was won by Royce Gracie, and it was when it was open weight. You fight multiple times in a night. I mean, if you don't know your history by now, we could get into that another topic another day, but the Gracie family, their name has spread and grown strong, and Kron Gracie is just one of the many Gracie descendants. And so yeah, you can imagine all of them specialize in grappling and jiu-jitsu, but does that mean you can beat a guy like Alex Caceres for Kron Gracie? Ideally, yes, because Alex Caceres is about a 500 fighter. He is a 500 fighter in the UFC, and he's lost a majority of his fights via submission. So ideally, this is a really good fight and a matchup for Kron Gracie. But Alex Caceres has almost 5 times the amount of UFC fights that Kron Gracie has pro fights. And fuck, that's hard to ignore. So who do you pick in this fight? Bruce Leroy, Alex Caceres, who's probably fighting for his career, fighting for his spot in the UFC. I'm sure he'd be an underdog considering he's lost a majority of his fights via submission. If this fight goes to the floor, I mean, I don't doubt Alex Caceres gets submitted. And I think Kron Gracie will be able to get this fight to the floor because Alex Caceres isn't known for his world-class takedown defense, or he probably wouldn't have lost half of his losses. So, God, this is such a tough fight for me to call. I'm going with Kron Gracie. It's hard for me to pick a guy with such a small fight. And another reason this is hard, like, if Kron Gracie was active, 4-0, won 3 fights last year, 1 fight this year, it'd be easy. He hasn't fought an MMA fight in about 3 years. A little over 2 years. So, I mean, it's not like he's some Aaron Pico, fucking Mike Kimball, like, young stud, AJ McKee. It's not like he's some young stud that's been actively fighting and, you know, you can just expect him to come in here and look good. We don't know what we're going to see from a 4-0 fighter fighting in the UFC against a guy that has way more experience. I mean, if there is a winnable fight for Kron Gracie in the UFC, it's probably this one, so I'll give him the edge. But I'm really interested to see how this fight plays out. Is Alex Caceres a world beater? No, but you don't need to be a world beater to beat a fighter that's 4-0 that hasn't fought in over 2 years. So, really good matchup in that sense. Can't wait. But one thing that is just epic to me is the Gracies started it all. As far as won the first championship, won the first tournament in the UFC. So it's awesome to see a descendant of the Gracies be able to be on the very first UFC on ESPN card. I think this is historic in that sense. Just the fact that Kron Gracie is on the card is awesome. Because if you go back to UFC 1, you know, Royce Gracie won the tournament, but it's just awesome. It's like full circle. They started it, and we got Kron Gracie here. I'm not going to say to finish it, but on the very first UFC on ESPN, so that's super dope regardless of how this fight plays out. I'm really interested to see the results of this fight. I don't know who's going to win. I'm giving a slight edge to Kron Gracie, but it's tough. You can't pick him with too much confidence. Yeah, so moving on to the next fight. This is going to be a good one. Cynthia Calvillo versus Courtney Casey. Another fight, man. I really like this card. Courtney Casey is 4-5 in the UFC, coming off of a split decision win over Angela Hill, which snapped a 2-fight losing streak and probably saved her spot in the UFC. Cynthia Calvillo, on the other hand, is 7-1 and has been fighting decent competition through her entire career, including the amateurs. I'm picking Calvillo to win this fight, but Courtney Casey's probably going to be one of the biggest, strongest girls she's fought to date. So Calvillo will need to put together a well-rounded game plan and show she can strike in this fight to get the W, because it's going to be hard to beat Courtney Casey with just your grappling. So, I mean, I do think Cynthia Calvillo can win this fight, but it might be tougher than resumes and recent fight results would tell you. So I like Calvillo to win, but looking forward to see how Courtney Casey fights back against the wall. She got that win over Angela Hill, but I do think Cynthia Calvillo is probably a significantly better fighter than Angela Hill. So let's move to the co-main event of the evening. We got Paul Felder versus James Vick. James Vick was riding a 4-fight winning streak before getting knocked out in the first round by Justin Gaethje in his last fight about 6 months ago, and he's 9-2 in the UFC. Paul Felder recently also had his win streak snapped when he lost a split decision to Mike Perry in a fight that was pretty much short notice for both guys, who lost their original opponents for different reasons. This is a tough fight to call because even though I'm slightly leaning toward Justin Gaethje, it's barely. Had James Vick not lost to Justin Gaethje, it's crazy because he would probably be ranked right outside the top 5 of the lightweight division right now and booked to fight somebody like Kevin Lee or Edson Barboza on, I can't say a much bigger stage because this is a big stage. I mean, stages don't get much bigger than this. The UFC's debut ESPN card, this is a huge opportunity, I think, and an honor for a fighter. So yeah, man, James Vick, he's now fighting a guy instead of, you know, fighting inside the top 10. He's fighting a guy that's arguably just as dangerous as those guys. He just doesn't have the same recognition or rank by his name. James Vick is a huge lightweight. He smashed all of his UFC opponents that didn't knock him out in the first round, which is why I'm giving him a slight edge to win, but you can never be too confident in picking him to win against somebody that does have knockout power, such as Paul Felder, who not only has the power to knock you out, but he's been fighting high-level fighters since he got in the UFC. So I am going to pick James Vick, but it's close to a toss-up here, but I'm going to give a slight edge to James Vick. Now it's time to talk about the fight that we are all here for. Francis Ngannou. I haven't even been moving my damn check mark. My bad, guys. It's going to suck for the people that are just skipping through this, trying to like see my predictions and don't want to hear all the talk. Apologize to those guys, but hey, you guys have probably already clicked off the video. So with that being said, let's use the check mark for this video. This might surprise some people. I'm actually picking the motherfucking Predator, Francis Ngannou, to pull off the upset here. Cain Velasquez is considered one of the best heavyweights to ever do it and former UFC champion whose career has really been derailed and slowed down by injury. But he is coming back, which is good to see. He's coming back to fight, though, Francis Ngannou, who some people believe has been exposed as a fighter, while others believe he still has the potential to become a future UFC champion. Style-wise, this is a terrible matchup for Ngannou, I must admit, because Cain Velasquez has great cardio and is also a great wrestler, both of which are not Ngannou's strong suits. That being said, I'm still picking Ngannou to win this fight because we all know he can knock out any man breathing if he lands I mean, it don't even have to be the perfect fucking shot with this guy. Don't let him touch you. You can go to sleep. Especially Cain Velasquez, who we have seen knocked out in the UFC. He's only lost twice, but we have seen it. And with that being said, on all of that aside, Cain Velasquez has only fought twice in the last 6 years. He lost to Fabricio Verdum, then came back and beat Travis Brown at UFC 200. Now, obviously, if Cain Velasquez comes in here and gets a takedown in the first round, the chances of Francis Ngannou winning drop dramatically. But Ngannou just knocked out Curtis Blaydes, which went under the radar because it was in UFC Shanghai, happened early in the morning. Not a lot of people got to see that fight, so unless you really went back and looked it up, watched the fight, or read the results, you probably missed that. But Curtis Blaydes is underrated as fuck and one of the best wrestlers in the heavyweight division, and he's in his prime, and Ngannou just knocked him out. So if he can knock out Curtis Blaydes, he can, well, we already know he can knock out anyone, but he can knock out Cain Velasquez, who hasn't fought in, what, 6 years? He's only fought twice. So, I mean, it's a winnable fight for Ngannou. Bad matchup, but a winnable fight. And as you can see, the theme of this card, I picked a couple underdogs. So we're going with the underdog on the main event. Let's go. I'm saying let's go. I mean, I'm kind of rooting for Cain Velasquez. It's not like I'm, I like Cain. But I just think, yeah, Ngannou might have something for the doubters and the critics, who are clearly, critics for good reason. I mean, it's a bad matchup. If Cain wins this fight, probably, I think it wouldn't be too surprising. I think the path to victory for Cain is there, but I'm leaning toward Ngannou because his is as well. And honestly, that win over Curtis Blaydes, who the Curtis Blaydes of today, is as good as a win over just about any of the top 5 ranked heavyweights in the UFC, barring Stipe Miocic, Daniel Cormier. But if you can beat Curtis Blaydes, you can fucking beat anybody walking, because Curtis Blaydes is that good. His wrestling, specifically cardio, which are what you would say is a terrible matchup for Ngannou. Curtis Blaydes was a terrible matchup for Ngannou in his prime, and Ngannou just knocked him out. So I'm going with Ngannou, guys. And that's my breakdown, and that's my predictions for this UFC on ESPN fight card. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If so, do your boy a favor. Smash the thumbs up button like your middle name is Khabib, or shoot, Francis Ngannou for that matter. And let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. I'm out.
Bye, Felicia.